WrestleMania is billed as WWE's supreme show, the event that everyone wants to be part of, either as a live spectator, a fan watching around the world, or crucially, as a performer, as a wrestler. However, just because it is the grandest stage of them all does not mean it is a perfect show. In fact, many WrestleManias fail to live up to the expectations and reputation the event commands. This will hopefully be a part of an ongoing series on this channel where we rank the past 39 WrestleManias in four separate chunks, starting with WrestleManias 31 to 39. And as with any ranking, we have to assign some categories for tiers. And so we have at the top all time. We have after all time intestinal fortitude. Right below that, we have so much promise. This is reserved for those manias that really felt like they could have been something amazing and they just didn't quite get there. And then finally, we have at the bottom, let's forget about this. The manias that we just wish we could all collectively burn out of our memories. On that note, Thanasi, are you ready to get into the WrestleManias 31 to 39?
I am ready and keen. Let's get started.
All right, to start off with, obviously, we've got WrestleMania 31. And just to briefly intro some of the highlights, we have the Randy Orton famous RKO after popping Rollins up in the air from the curb stomp, one of his better RKOs out of nowhere. Obviously, on building on that, Rollins cashing in to win the WWE Championship, the heist of the century. This was a match that had Triple H versus Sting, Sting's only WrestleMania match. Rusev had a great entrance to the Soviet Union theme, very epic.
Was it to the Soviet theme? You're
I
kidding.
I believe it was.
Good Lord.
Rewatch it back and let me know if I've got it wrong, but I believe it was. And this is just some of the big things from the show. How do you remember WrestleMania 31?
I'll tell you exactly how I remember it. I don't remember it at all because this was during the period where I wasn't watching WWE. However, when I was running through the card, what I saw was John Cena buries an up and coming promising heel. I saw we didn't get Undertaker versus Sting in basically the 1 year where it was an opportunity. I saw that the Divas title at the time was not even defended. And there was also the main event that essentially no one wanted, and that had to be saved by the heist of the century. So with this one, it really, really makes me feel disappointed the way that it panned out. I mean, the Undertaker versus Bray Wyatt, which should have been fantastic, is barely memorable, right? So my honest opinion here is it was a disappointing outing in all, if I can put it that way. What about you? What do you remember from it?
Well, for me, it's the way it ends is what I remember. I think
Indeed.
this show is actually remembered quite favorably from people that watched it. Um, I wasn't necessarily well ingrained with WWE at this time. I'd taken a bit of a dive in my interest, especially because I was sort of getting deeper into my high school years a little bit, so it was kind of harder to keep up to date with what was going on. But I think it's one of those that it is saved by its conclusion, but like you said, there were things that they could have done with it that just I feel like perfectly fit in the category so much promise.
I think I would actually agree with that. That's where I was thinking I would put it, to be quite frank with you.
Yeah, I think it belongs there. It's not a terrible show. In fact, a lot of people speak of it highly. I just think we potentially just weren't in the right place in our fandom to enjoy
I,
this for
I
what it
just
might have
think
been.
that exactly as we've named the category, there was a lot of potential there. It just wasn't tapped properly.
Well, on to the next WrestleMania, WrestleMania 32. This is famously the one where injuries ravaged the roster and it drastically affected the card. I just want to mention that there is a boring as hell main event between Roman Reigns and Triple H, which I rewatched for the purpose of our ranking Roman Reigns main events video, which is on the channel now if you would like to see it. But I do want to say AJ Styles' WrestleMania debut against Jericho is still a really good match with a really good finish. Zack Ryder had a really nice feel-good moment, winning the IC championship from in the ladder match. Shane McMahon decided to test his body's limits by diving off the top of the Hell in a Cell in his match against The Undertaker. So there are definitely moments from this Mania that I remember well, but I think in large part, it's another Mania where it didn't quite live up to the expectations it might have had.
I think that's putting it lightly, Dimitri, and I'll put it to you this way. This was the Mania when I started to get back into wrestling or started to watch it again as like a coping mechanism for dealing with my HSC here. And this was the worst way to start with that, to be quite honest with you, because all you could hear was booze, booze, booze in the main event. And I'm running down the card here. You had the reigning tag champions in the New Day putting over the League of Nations because it was a non-title match. You had Brock Lesnar basically being uncooperative with Dean Ambrose in a hardcore match. And I think I remember the way that Paul Heyman sold it in his pre-match promo was, this is the match you've all been waiting for. The no holds barred street fighting.
Ah,
Do you remember that?
yes,
Do
I
you
do.
remember that?
Now that you're, oh my God.
So
I
I'll
love
put it
that
this
one.
way. I'll put it this way, if I may. This show was by no means immemorable, but there's a lot of moments that I wish we can't remember. So I think it's one that we want to forget.
Look, I'm happy to put it there. This is one that I think I prefer to rewatch to WrestleMania 31, but only in small parts. WrestleMania 31 in general is just a show that's like it could have been better. This is one where there are some good moments, like even the Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks triple threat to crown the inaugural WWE Women's Champion. That was good. But then for every one of those, you've got, as you said, the League of Nations versus the New Day, which then led to Shawn Michaels and Steve Austin doing a booty dance. I don't want to remember that. So yeah, I'm happy to put it in let's forget about this.
Awesome.
After that,
Moving on to number 33.
that's correct. And this one, again, I find quite similar to 32, where I do remember it well, but sometimes I wish I didn't. I think it has a great opening match between AJ Styles and Shane McMahon, which is impressive, but it goes to show the talent of AJ Styles to bring out such a good performance out of basically anyone. This one also has one of my favorite moments of wrestling ever, and that is the Hardys' return.
Do you
Uh,
do you remember do you remember me in this year? I was like first year uni, how I reacted to this one.
I remember how I reacted to this. We watched it together, and I think we were both embracing each other, and we really don't do that for
It
those.
was in disbelief that they actually freaking pulled it off. Like it was just an, we talk about moments in wrestling. This was an absolutely amazing moment because they kept it a secret. Like there were rumors going around, will they, won't they, will they, won't they? And I was so thrilled that they actually pulled through with it. However, I'm looking at the card. This might be the only massive moment here. And the impacts of that on where we rank this or which tier we select may be dire. If I may have just a bit of freedom here. The
Please.
opening match, yes, it was good, but why is AJ Styles fighting Shane McMahon at WrestleMania? Kevin Owens versus Chris Jericho. That one should have been the main event for the world title. The four-way women's title match, this was supposed to be Bayley's coronation, not her walking in and defending the strap. The fatal four-way ladder match, excellent, just for that moment. We had John Cena's proposal, good Lord. Rollins versus Triple H was a good match, but I think the biggest pop there was when Stephanie got smacked through the table. Orton versus Wyatt, we remember, was disappointing. Lesnar versus Goldberg would have been fine without the strap, but the fact that they had to shove that in there just pissed me off because it was taking off attention from what should have been the real main event. The six-pack challenge for the women's match, okay, 5-minute match. And then The Undertaker losing at WrestleMania to Vince's Golden Boy. Thumbs firmly down on that last one, especially. Your views, Dimitri, on where we would put this?
I think we want to forget about it. There are some things maybe we don't, and it's harsh, but the way they screwed over Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho, The Undertaker's performance is just something that I think even he would love to forget. And having one great opening match doesn't salvage a WrestleMania, which, by the way, is something that's going to be a recurring theme coming up. So yeah, I think this belongs in Let's Forget About This too, unfortunately.
Wow, that is harsh. I was actually going to say to put it in tier three, but I think perhaps as a statement of principle, that Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho should not be treated this way, I'm going to agree with you. So let's put it at least provisionally at the top of Let's Forget About It for the moment.
For the moment. And we can revisit it as well.
Indeed.
Well, WrestleMania 34 is next, and this also had a great opening match, probably match of the night in the triple threat Intercontinental Championship match between Seth Rollins, The Miz, and Finn Balor. This was a pay-per-view that I was really excited for. I felt like it was going to lead to something remarkable all time. I thought this was going to be an all time before it actually happened. But then Charlotte Flair beat Asuka. And Asuka said, "Oh, you are ready for me." I was like, "What?" Jinder Mahal won the US Championship. Okay, great. Kurt Angle and Ronda Rousey, admittedly, with Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, had a very good match. Probably Ronda Rousey's best match of her career, and it was her first. The Bludgeon Brothers beat the Usos and the New Day. The match itself isn't remarkable, but this was a debut Usos match on the main card of WrestleMania. So I do remember that a little bit more fondly. The Undertaker beating John Cena, I was just so thankful he did. I was terrified what might happen if they had Cena beat him. Daniel Bryan's return is a really good feel-good moment. AJ Styles beating Shinsuke. This is again, it felt like this was the right moment to crown a new champion, and they didn't do it. Nia Jax and Alexa Bliss. I personally didn't care, and I believe there was a bullying element that was put into this that felt a
That was
bit.
good. That was good.
Oh, but I felt like it was, it wasn't. It
It
was
was
a bit
forced.
insensitive
That's
at
what it was.
times.
It was forced.
And then obviously a child won the tag team championships. I mean, what the hell? And then it
Uh,
it finished with Brock Lesnar beating Roman Reigns in a match that we just all just wanted to just let it be done, give it to Roman and let it be done, and it wasn't. This is why it's this one though, to me, it feels like it fits so perfectly in so much promise. It is by no means the worst show they've put out, but it's also this one could have been an all-time and it wasn't.
See, here's my view. I enjoy 33 more than this one. So my view is that this one actually has to go under 33, regardless of the tier that it's in. However, provisionally, when I was putting this together, I did have it in so much promise for all the reasons that you're talking about. So as far as that direct relationship, I actually do agree that that tier does meet the meaning of this one, which is so much promise, especially with the booking perspective. Good Lord.
Well, we can maybe revisit WrestleMania 33 a bit later
That's
and
fine.
discuss that. On to WrestleMania 35. This one is notable for being the first ever women's main event. Obviously, Becky Lynch's crowning moment, something we all wanted. But the problem is, this show is so long. And quite frankly, this show is the reason we have two-night WrestleManias. Because it took so long to get to Becky Lynch's crowning moment that I think a lot of people were kind of exhausted by the end. And it's not to say, oh, this was a night with 5 hours of great wrestling that inspired us. There are highlights, but by no means did it carry our attention the whole way through. Seth Rollins did win the world title in a sort of shocking, quick match. But of course, this was the theme of Brock Lesnar during this time. He wasn't wrestling for long periods of time. He was in and out. AJ Styles beat Randy Orton. I would say it's neither of their best matches or most memorable matches. It's not bad, but it doesn't stick out in the memory. Uh, the Shane McMahon beat The Miz. There's some nice spots there, but largely it felt like, did we need Shane McMahon on the
Did we
card?
ever ask for them?
I think the highlight of this show, outside of obviously Becky Lynch's moment, crowning moment, is Kofi Kingston getting his first ever world championship of the WWE championship win over Daniel Bryan. And I think that does lift the show a lot, especially since it was sort of like like right in the middle as well.
If I can put it this way, WrestleMania is not the show that you think of for the greatest matches of all time, right? The greatest matches in history. It is the show you think of when you think of the greatest moments in wrestling history. And both Becky's victory in the winner takes all triple threat and Kofi's victory at Kofi Mania are some of the all-time highlights for world title victories, I would say. And if I can put this on Becky Lynch, right? Call me a cuck, whatever. But this match, this main event was the most deserving. Talk about women's revolution, talk about women's evolution. Every real wrestling fan will tell you that Becky Lynch was so hot in that period. She walked out the night after the Royal Rumble in 2019, confronted Ronda Rousey, and the place was boiling. It was like, this is the confrontation we've all been begging for. Let's not have a tease. Don't care about the SmackDown strap. Put her in the ring against Ronda Rousey. Did Charlotte Flair need to get added to this? No. Did her insertion deem it less worthy to go in the main event? Also no. But this moment of having the first ever women's main event was because it was hot, it was ready, it was organic, it was not forced. And that's the point that I want to emphasize.
Well, on that point, then, which category do you think this fits in?
I genuinely think that it would be close to all time, if not in our second category. Well,
Uh,
what did we name tier two again?
Intestinal fortitude.
Intestinal fortitude. Well, intestinal fortitude certainly does describe the performance of someone like a Kofi Kingston. However, the two memories that I have of this one, and I'm willing to take the argument of it's a two-match card. I'm willing to accept that point. But the mere fact of these two massive moments that are all-time historic wrestling moments means that it has to go in all time, in my opinion.
I think it doesn't go in all time because two matches is great, but it doesn't make up for the other 4 hours of tediousness. But I'll grant you intestinal fortitude. How about that?
Let's go with it.
Let's go with that. Okay, moving on, we've got the first two-night WrestleMania, and that was WrestleMania 36. This one was obviously the COVID-19 Mania, so there were no fans. It was done at the Performance Center. Uh, there were two matches, cinematic matches, that were standouts in terms of the memory of fans, and they have great rewatchability, I feel, as well, especially the Firefly Funhouse match. This is notably Undertaker's last ever match as well, and I think AJ Styles gave him a worthy conclusion that, quite frankly, only someone like Shawn Michaels could have given him. And this, I think it came out at a time in which fans such as us needed this sort of entertainment just to sort of take us off the really big global health issue, situation, crisis that we were in. So I think it's almost like even though it's not an all-time mania for me, I feel like I remember this time fondly because of the way it gave us that escapism.
We also need to accept the fact, and we can't really do anything about it as far as how we measure it for the purposes of this video, but they pulled it off in a really, really excellent way, especially leaning into this whole cinematic thing. It did lead to some innovation. So we could say, we could apply the principle of scaling and be like, well, there was a significant disadvantage. So how does that play out? But I think that genuinely it was a thoroughly enjoyable kind of pay-per-view. And it really demonstrated the intestinal fortitude of World Wrestling Entertainment at the time.
And let's not forget, this was Edge's return to WrestleMania as well.
Amazing. I was
So
watching a video recently that ranked Edge's match against Randy Orton in the bottom 10 matches of this year. I thought it was a bit harsh, but I do get it that they didn't quite capitalize on like the timing aspect and they dragged it out too much. But it was still a big deal to have Edge back. That was awesome to have Edge at another WrestleMania.
for me, I'll just add very quickly, we had missed Edge for 10 years. that I was happy to just see as much of him as required. So if he wanted to wrestle for 40 minutes, let him do it. All right, well, on to the next WrestleMania, WrestleMania 37. This one, I think, has two excellent main events for each night. The first night with Bianca Belair beating Sasha Banks for the WWE SmackDown Women's Championship, and the second night having Roman Reigns defend successfully his Universal Championship against Edge and Daniel Bryan. And I think that that really stands out. And also, we got to give some credit. Bad Bunny actually had a good match for a celebrity. Rollins, Cesaro, Owens, Zayn, even Lashley McIntyre for the WWE Championship are all very good matches. And Sheamus's broke kick to Matt Riddle, a mid springboard moonsault, was an excellent finish and is an excellent finish. So I think this Mania, it doesn't necessarily have, with the exception of the main event, it doesn't have necessarily that like iconic, oh my God, Titans collide feel. But I feel like it has lots of all-round, very good technical skill wrestling and showcasing talents. How do you feel about this one?
I don't altogether disagree with you. I think some of this card did leave a little bit wanting. We had two nights worth, and we still had like two real standout matches, I suppose, in the two main events. I guess it was nice to see Rhea Ripley get her first ever, because this is when she became recognized as the first ever Australian world champion from WWE. So this was a big deal for her as well. But I think we can't discount the disappointment of Randy Orton going up against The Fiend, and we have this Samson and Delilah like betrayal where Alexa Bliss turns on The Fiend during the match in the finish. She starts bleeding black or something. And that was really disappointing. So overall, it wasn't a horrible pay-per-view, but it's definitely not an all-time one. Definitely not. I'm kind of tossing up between the second and the third tiers, to be honest.
I think off the back of the strength of its main events, that it does raise it to the second tier, intestinal fortitude, because let's not forget, with the two-night format, you have 3.5 hours of wrestling. If you're able to finish each one strongly, it does have it leaves a better taste in the mouth compared to a strong finish to a 5-hour show.
Yep.
So I'm leaning to intestinal fortitude.
Let's go with that.
Okay, after that, we have WrestleMania 38, which was supposedly going to be the most stupendous Mania of all time or something like that. I think this one it's interesting because I think night one, upon reflection, is almost like perfect in the way it's structured. And what I mean by that is obviously this had Cody Rhodes' return to WWE, and he had an excellent match with Seth Rollins. And preceding that, we had Bianca Belair defeat Becky Lynch in another superb wrestling match for the Raw Women's Championship. After Cody Rhodes Rollins, we had Charlotte Flair beat Ronda Rousey. That left it down, but then it got picked up by Stone Cold Steve Austin wrestling Kevin Owens. And by no means is it a classic, but for what Austin is able to pull off, Owens worked around him to perfection. It was just a brawl.
Look, the fact that you could bring in Stone Cold Steve Austin at his age and in the year 2022 and have people see him in the main event as like a realistic sort of thing. And can I also say this? I was so stoked back then that Kevin Owens got the shout to main event WrestleMania, because now that can never be taken away from the bloke. He even did it again, because we're going to talk about it very, very shortly. But purely on the back of that, massive thumbs up for this sort of thing, right? Getting Kevin Owens in the main event, a thoroughly well-deserving wrestler, just a big deal. As we said as well, the return of Cody. Do you remember when we were at Yaya's that day and we popped and she was like joining in with us, even though she didn't understand what was going on?
She didn't understand why this bleached blonde man was making us all collectively scream like little girls.
Yeah. And we were all, I think, by that point, even like at least nearly 18. So we're talking about grown men exclaiming here.
Well, we certainly were grown men. We have no
you
excuse.
and I were. You and I were.
What I think though is
Um,
that where night one is so strong, I feel like night two is lacking. Uh,
Indeed.
Everything with Pat McAfee, Austin Theory, and Mr. McMahon. Oh my God, I just don't care. There were some nothing matches. Edge versus AJ Styles was a match that I feel like it just didn't live up to what we thought it would be. Johnny Knoxville beating Sami Zayn in a sort of gimmick comedy match. A lot of people really love that match. I felt like it was a waste of Sami Zayn's talent. Now, obviously, since then, he's gone on to do some great stuff, and he's credited saying that he's really proud of that match, and fair enough to him. But I just feel like when you compare that to when he wrestled Roman Reigns at Elimination Chamber 2023 for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship, like then it's night and day for me. So
And
I
also,
feel
who can forget being topped off by just the most disappointing main event? Like, is this really what we wanted? Like,
Well, I don't
we
think it was disappointing. I just think it was boring because we knew that's what they were going to do, and we kind of were fearful that if Brock beat Roman Reigns, it would mean this story was for nothing, that him holding it for so long. So it felt like we just needed to happen. Similar to WrestleMania 34. We just felt like we needed that win to happen to give it to Roman, but no one was ecstatic about it. It was just a let's just get it done. So
let's just get it over and done with. Yeah,
so I
you're
feel
absolutely
like
right.
night two, it does bring it back. And to me, it's just a question of how much does it bring it back for you?
I think it's somewhere abstractly between the bottom of intestinal fortitude and the top of tier three.
Mhm. See, that's my problem, Zox. I completely agree with you. Should we just provisionally put it in bottom of intestinal fortitude and we'll revisit it?
Yeah, let's put it there for now.
And finally, we have WrestleMania 39. And I'm hesitant here because I know that the end wasn't what we wanted, but I feel like WrestleMania 39 is surrounded by great moments. And what I mean by that, not just moments, matches, because we have Rhea Ripley properly being crowned as the top women's wrestler by beating Charlotte Flair in what is for me is my favorite ever women's wrestling match. And then that night was main evented by Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn beating the Usos for the Undisputed WWE Tag Team Championships. And that was, to me, a phenomenal main event, a feel good, phenomenal main event.
Phenomenal wrestling, phenomenal story, phenomenal booking. Everything just worked out perfectly. It's exactly what we want. And it's the peak of a story taking place at WrestleMania. And we've got Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn and the Usos in the main event of WrestleMania. Again, no one can take this away from them. The Usos already proved in 2017 how good they were when they shed off the face paint and started to talk about day one ish. And this showed the extent of their potential. So, we call tier three so much potential. This is one where we actually squeezed every bit of that out of it. And I was so stoked that we got it.
And I want to even add on night two, which a lot of people don't like as much, and they feel like the Roman Reigns victory takes away from it. We've got to add Gunther versus Sheamus versus Drew McIntyre for the WWE Intercontinental Championship. To me, is the best match of the whole Mania card. For me, I feel like it's just legendary and it's so expertly done by all three competitors. Edge beating Finn Balor, the match itself isn't the biggest of the Mania, but the fact it was in Hell in a Cell gave it stakes. It made
It
it
was a, it
feel
was it
like
was a
something
good
impressive.
match. It wasn't an excellent match, but it was a good match.
Bianca Belair beating Asuka, again, a good example of a good, solid match. And I still feel that Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes, despite the booking decision, I still think is an excellent match. And I think it's one that, upon reflection, might look more favorably if Cody can pull it off this year. So in hindsight, people might remember this one with a bit more fondness because they know the payoff eventually came to be.
I agree with you. So
I
that
think
where are we
that
going to put it?
I think this is the only Mania that of this bulk that really to me stands out above the rest because there are multiple candidates for match of the night. There are multiple crowning moments. There are multiple defining moments in already existing historic reigns. I think this one, despite not having the fairy tale finish, is still an example of an all-time WrestleMania. What do you think?
I am 100% in agreement with you. It is going to be our one and only entry, apparently, in that top tier. We'll see how we're going to shuffle, but it's certainly going to be at the top of all time.
Okay, well, to recap the manias, and we're gonna do our final ranking here as well.
Yep.
WrestleMania 31, we put in So Much Promise. I think we're comfortable with that.
Yep.
WrestleMania 32, we put in Let's Forget About This.
And
Again,
right at the
that's,
bottom of it,
yes, at the bottom. I think I'm comfortable with that. WrestleMania 33, we had Let's Forget About This, although we agreed potentially to put that in So Much Promise. WrestleMania 34, we had in So Much Promise. I think we're quite categorical. Actually, WrestleMania 34, how do you feel about it? You said So Much Promise.
look, I think there was so much promise because I'm thinking of the booking decisions of Charlotte Asuka and Styles Nakamura, right? And likewise, when I'm thinking of so much promise for WrestleMania 33, or when I was, it's because I was thinking that Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho should have been in the main event with the Universal title. And the WWE Championship match between Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt could have been a lot better. So that's my logic there. I'm thinking about the world titles
You know
in
what?
those situations.
I'm willing to promote WrestleMania 33 to So Much Promise, just so that 32 has to languish in that category all on its own.
That's very nice.
So then WrestleMania 35, we gave Intestinal Fortitude. I think that's fair placing.
Yep.
36, we gave Intestinal Fortitude. This is, people should, we should remember, this is our list. Some might not like this show as much, but for us, I feel like it came at a good time. WrestleMania 37, Intestinal Fortitude. I think that's fair enough as well. WrestleMania 38, Intestinal Fortitude. This is one where it's on the verge. I'm willing to
Can
discuss
we
it.
discuss here where we positioned these four that we've put these 35, 36, 37, 38 within intestinal fortitude?
I think that 38 should be on the lower end because it has high highs but quite low lows.
I also think that 37 should be on the low side as well for very, very similar reasons. That it was just, or actually more for like for the exact opposite, that it was just very much just kind of like in the middle. There was a little bit of fluctuation, but it was generally on this tone of somewhere in the middle, no massive peaks and troughs.
I think 37 stands out more than 36.
Do you?
I do. I think that because like I said, I feel like 37, also the fact that fans came back, it added a lot to the atmosphere.
All right. Well, how about this? I'll agree to that if we can put Kofi Mania and Becky Two Belts at the top of this intestinal fortitude tier.
Agreed. We have an accord.
We have an accord. Get me out.
And then finally we have WrestleMania 39 alone at the top of the list. I think that's fair enough.
I think so too.
Okay, well that's our list. Let us know in the comments what you think about it. Did we stuff it up or is it perfect? Let us know your thoughts.